Hi, welcome to America Uncovered. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. The U.S. Supreme Court, one of the three main branches of the U.S. government. It's the judicial one. Unlike the legislative and executive branches, the 9 Supreme Court justices are not elected. Each judge or justice is appointed by the president and needs to be approved by the Senate. And the Supreme Court has certainly been on everyone's mind a lot more than usual recently. Judge Brett Kavanaugh has been appointed to the Supreme Court after a somewhat rocky confirmation process.
Sergeant at Arms will restore order in the gallery.
There's a reason both Democrats and Republicans are fighting tooth and nail for seats on the Supreme Court. Over the past 100 years, the Supreme Court has been playing a bigger role in shaping the nation. And like the changing shape of the nation, the power of the Supreme Court has also grown bigger. In our previous episode about Brett Kavanaugh, I mentioned that before 1940, less than 2% of Supreme Court rulings were decided by a single vote. Now, that's more than 20% and rising. But making laws is supposed to be the duty of the legislative branch. The Supreme Court was supposed to be a non-political body that only interpreted the law. Non-political. Clearly the Founding Fathers were not all that far-seeing. In some cases, when the Supreme Court interprets law, it effectively makes law. For example, by ruling that states may or may not prohibit something. So here are 5 Supreme Court rulings that changed America, from oldest to most recent. Number 5. Separate but not equal. I hope you're sitting down, because I'm about to blow your mind. Did you know that there has been a history of racial tensions in the United States? Yep. Even after slavery was ended, for decades, certain states segregated blacks and whites. Fun story. My mom's family moved from California to the segregated South when she was a little girl. The first thing she and her sister saw after landing at the airport was a sign that said, "Colored water fountain." Being children, their first thought was, "Wow, colored water!" And they ran to have a drink. That ended in disappointment, for many reasons. Segregation had been ruled constitutional in the 1896 Supreme Court case Plessy v. Ferguson, so long as blacks and whites were separate but equal. But in 1954, the Supreme Court heard the case of Brown v. the Board of Education. In a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court ruled that the whole separate but equal thing was clearly not working out. Black people were subjected to inferior accommodations, services, and treatment, particularly in schools. Brown v. Board of Education ruled segregation in schools was unconstitutional, and therefore schools across the nation had to desegregate. In some cases, the military had to be deployed to make schools comply. Arkansas! The ruling set the stage for what would be the civil rights movement. Number 4. The most controversial ruling ever. A common misconception is that the Roe v. Wade ruling legalized abortion. Technically not true. The Supreme Court cannot directly ban or legalize abortion. Here's what actually happened. Prior to the 1973 ruling, abortion laws were up to individual states. 4 states, Hawaii, Alaska, New York, and Washington, had completely legalized abortion. And more than a dozen other states allowed abortion in cases of danger to the woman's health, severe fetal deformities, rape, or incest. Other states had strict laws that banned abortions. But the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 that laws that outright banned abortions violated a woman's right to privacy based on the 14th Amendment and were therefore unconstitutional. The Supreme Court ruling did not technically make abortions legal. Instead, it took away the power of states to make it illegal by saying that states cannot restrict a woman's access to abortion. But states can still make laws that regulate abortions. Today, a lot of people are concerned Brett Kavanaugh will change that. And a lot of people are hoping Brett Kavanaugh will change that. We covered that issue on our other episode, Will Trump Ban Abortion? Check it out, the link is below. Number 3, corporations are people too. Remember when former presidential hopeful Mitt Romney said this?
Corporations are people, my friend.
Well, he might have been kind of joking, but the 2010 case of Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission made it kind of true. Back during the 2008 elections, the Democratic primaries were pretty divided between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And the conservative nonprofit Citizens United wanted to air a documentary critical of Hillary Clinton called Hillary the Movie.
I am sick and tired of people who say that if you debate and you disagree with this administration, somehow you're not patriotic, and we should stand up and say, we are Americans and we have a right to debate and disagree with any administration.
They also had a great idea for a follow-up theme park and a follow-up video game. Citizens United wanted to air and advertise the movie shortly before the 2008 Democratic primaries, but that was illegal based on the 2002 Campaign Reform Act. Corporations and labor unions were not allowed to use their unlimited budgets to affect an election. But in a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that corporations, just like people, have a First Amendment right to freedom of speech. And that includes political speech. So that's why today, billionaires like George Soros or the Koch brothers get to form super PACs and spend tens of millions of dollars to influence elections. Number 2, you're my favorite customer. In free market capitalism, you can never know for sure what's going to be a hit. But when the government can require you to buy something, it becomes much simpler. In 2012, the Supreme Court had another close 5-4 ruling, this time about the Affordable Care Act. You know, Obamacare. Part of the Affordable Care Act said all Americans needed to have health insurance by 2014. This was known as the individual mandate. Now, whatever your opinion is on universal health care, you probably don't think of it as a tax. But that's how the Supreme Court saw it. Individuals are required to have health care. If you don't, you'll have to cough up a little extra cash to the government in the form of a tax penalty. The Supreme Court ruled that this tax penalty was a constitutional extension of Congress's right to tax citizens. Now, if I can just get Congress to pass a law that Americans have to buy my Star Wars Aladdin fan fiction or face a tax penalty. Number 1. Sorry, Noah, a rainbow means something different now. Do same-sex couples have the right to marry? Amazingly, that was a very close decision. Before the Supreme Court ruling, 36 states, the District of Columbia, and Guam had already legalized gay marriage. Just like with abortion, gay marriage had been up to the laws of individual states. But in this 5-4 ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court held that the 14th Amendment guarantees equal rights to all citizens and effectively legalized gay marriage across the country by saying states cannot prohibit it. So, those were 5 Supreme Court decisions that changed the country. Of course, now the Supreme Court is mostly conservative, with 2 justices appointed by President Trump. So who knows what fun new ways laws might get interpreted. America's a roller coaster, so be sure to stay tuned for America Uncovered, the show, The Ride. And if you'd like to contribute to the fun, support America Uncovered on Patreon. YouTube loves to demonetize our videos, so we rely on viewer support to keep making the show. All the research, writing, and editing isn't free, and until I can get the Supreme Court to force you to give, I'm stuck asking nicely. Head over to patreon.com/America Uncovered and contribute, for example, $1 per episode. Please. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.